Starting off our list is Todd Gurley. Gurley going into the season looked like the steal of the draft, but now we're seeing the reason he was where he was. LA was serious about not using him as much. It's very well possible his usage gets bumped up near the end of the season if they are fighting for a playoff spot. But the Rams offensive line has been banged up, and it isn't what it was last year, plain and simple. More importantly, that ever so important week 16 matchup is versus what has been one of the best defenses in all of football this year, a team that held the Rams to just 7 points in their first meeting this season, the San Francisco 49ers. Aaron Jones. Jones has had some outstanding fantasy weeks, and some his owners would like to forget. The Packers finished out the fantasy season playing the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. The biggest concern here is his consistency for me. One fumble and Williams is plugged right into that lineup. Not to mention, the more Rodgers gets to play the offensive style he wants, the more his team becomes more pass heavy. That can still benefit Jones, of course, but if you can manage to pick up a running back on a team that relies on a running back a little bit more, or maybe you're just deep at the running back position, you can pick up a good wide receiver one over here, this could be a good place to do it. Julio Jones. Now, this is where we remind you real quick, this is not a video that is about bad players whose trade value is great right now that would need traded, but more along the lines of really good players that are tough to let go, but it's at the same point where in that point of the season, you want to be prepared for playoff fantasy football. The Falcons have had an absolute travesty of a season. You really have to wonder how hard the Falcons in general are going to make their star player play in the latter half of the season if they're, say, 3-11 or 2-12 around this time of the year. More importantly for Julio, he's never really been a touchdown guy. His fantasy points usually come from the ridiculous amount of receiving yards he accumulates in a season. So you see the problem with that is he's going to be going up against the second best pass defense in the league in the 49ers week 15. You have to win the semifinals matchup to get to the finals matchup. With little touchdown upside and a team with no motive to win, Julio could be in line for a lousy 3 for 34 yards type of night during that game. Last we're going to throw on here, and I don't know how much trade value he has these days. Maybe there's some believers, but that is still Odell Beckham Jr. Now, I think he's got some upside and some great games still ahead of him here, but the problem is you have to get to those games. If you're, 4-4 right now, you might really want to consider moving Odell if you can. If you can find somebody that really wants him. I wouldn't give him away by any means at all, but if you can find somebody that still believes in him, because he is on that Browns team that is not seeming to be that Browns team we was expecting. They've had a tough go about it, but more importantly, this guy's got at New England, at Denver, and Buffalo the next 3 weeks. 3 of the best pass defenses in the league. Again, some of the best cover corners in the league as well over there in Denver and in New England that are going to be following him around all night. We've seen how Odell performs against these guys. Marlon Humphrey, for example, how he performs against these top tier corners in the league. He seems to struggle and get frustrated, and that can be a very big concern for Odell. After those 3 games, though, things starting to lighten up a little bit for him where he could start to perform a little bit better. Again, though, you have to get the playoffs if he's going to lay eggs for your 3 straight weeks. You got to consider that. And even more importantly, we brought up Marlon Humphrey. That's going to be the guy following around Odell Beckham Jr. again in week 16. The guy that followed Beckham around in week 4 and allowed him a grand total of 20 receiving yards. And that was a lot of trash receiving yards at the end of the game. If you remember, that was after Nick Chubb ran all over the place. Then he finally did pick up a catch or 2. It was a scary game for Odell. He just about dropped that goose egg. I would be very, very concerned about seeing that happen again. Those are our 4 players. If you enjoyed the video, big thumbs up, like, appreciate it. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.